Hello, everyone. Sarah Muirhead, and we are back with a weather update with Greg Soulje. Welcome, Greg. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Sarah. Nice to be with you here on a pretty quiet day for now across at least our part of the Corn Belt. And I'm glad you decided to come back from the 85-degree weather down in Texas at CattleCon. That would,
Right,
that would
down
have
at
been a struggle for me to
CattleCon.
come back.
It was hot. It was too hot. Let's go with that. No, it was very nice. And I know you guys were up here in the Midwest going through a little bit of an ice storm, and
Yeah,
there's snow here and there. So kind of a mixed bag across the country. So let's just
exactly.
get a quick update from you as to what might be ahead as we move through these next few days.
Yeah, and we'll have certainly some specific details as well on this weekend's edition of This Week in Agribusiness, and also the 4-week forecast that'll take us through here on my note card to the 9th of March. And for some folks, at least in the southern states, that's the start of some fieldwork season down there. In any event, back kind of the headlines across the Corn Belt going forward over the past few days. Pretty uneventful weather in the short term, but we've got a bit of a pattern shift going on. We'll talk about it on the TV show this weekend. But otherwise, the next weather system for the weekend is going to probably impact areas of the Dakotas, especially South Dakota for a change. They've had some blowing and drifting snow up through North Dakota and some accumulating snow back through Montana. But it's been really South Dakota, Nebraska that have been on the shorter side of the snow gauge and the snow ruler this winter time season. And there is the next weather system. That's a snapshot at Saturday out of the Dakotas, Montana, and that little H you see over the southern Canadian prairie. That's the next kind of piece or blob of Arctic air that's going to help to fuel this weather system. That 85-degree weather that you experience down in through Texas, that's the warmer end of the curve. I think Borger, Texas, and Lubbock have been up around 90 the past couple of days, so you get 90, and then you do the math and try to add readings that have been staying below zero at 5 or 10 below zero. That's a 100-degree spread over parts of the country, and so that means a busy weather pattern. But we get snow going across parts of the Dakotas and rain. And the rains, and there's the other end of the spectrum, Sarah. There have been areas of Kentucky and the Ohio Valley that picked up 5-6 inches of rain the past couple of days. And they're in flood already out of parts of northeastern Texas, Oklahoma, or at least Arkansas, into parts of Kentucky. And there's more rain coming in their direction. And we'll take a look at that here the next few days. Interesting note here, while there's snow breaking out for the northern plains, parts of Big Sky Country, as you pointed out, 85 to 90-degree weather, West Texas down through the San Antonio area to the Rio Grande. And the interesting caveat here, at the end of January, 34% of Nebraska's winter wheat crop reported poor and very poor. That also extends up across South Dakota as well, and parts of Kansas. And we'll have an updated drought monitor coming up, and it's kind of beginning to worsen again in that particular part of the winter wheat belt. There is the drought monitor, by the way, and you can see the shades of red out through the Nebraska Panhandle, around the Black Hills, parts of the Dakotas, the Western Dakotas, up through Montana. Patchy lingering drought over the central and southern plains. The worst areas over western Texas. The Southwest has been just abysmal with their precipitation season. Typically in the wintertime, you get the recharge not only in the Cascades and the Northern Sierra, but the Southwest Mountains. And I think that will be probably an ongoing story going forward this spring. The Southwestern drought that we think is going to teleconnect eastward with time. We'll get to that in the future broadcast. But the southern states, as you pointed out, only the real headline is the 90-degree weather in Texas. And again, some wetter areas. We're still a few weeks away from getting field work going, but eastern Texas, the Delta region, the southeastern states, as we roll into the beginning part of March, they tend to get their field work going in that particular part of the country. Just kind of grab this chart off. Probably should have used the other one, but you can see the range of temperatures readings at night. Those top left and bottom left panels are down below zero, and will get colder as we get additional snow on the ground up through Montana, the Dakotas, Minnesota. In contrast, in the lows at night in the 60s, and look at the range daytime readings of the Gulf Coast into the 80s to near 90. Daytime readings will be hard pressed across the Dakotas, upper Midwest to get past zero. So, we get these ranges of temperatures at the surface that also extends into jet stream levels. So when you get a range of compaction of temperatures winds blow stronger up aloft. They tend to bend and buckle, and that's how we get weather systems to move on through. And in the western states, of course, the big story is the Southwest. Of course, we had the fires in Southern California. That's been tempered, but just no organized moisture systems out there whatsoever, and they're meager at best. So the problem is expanding dryness and drought. We use that runoff, that snow in the central and southern Sierra and the mountains of the Southwest to run into the ag areas, the irrigated areas of Southern California and the Southwest. And when we don't get winter snow, we don't get runoff, and dryness and drought become a story early on, especially if we get early season heat over the southwestern sections of the country. And I think there will be some early season heat out there. There's a snow cover map, for example, and that is only about 29% of the country covered with snowfall and snow cover. We should have double that, more than half typically, which extends all the way down into southern Kansas, parts of the central Corn Belt, and across the southwestern reaches of the country. I think we'll improve that. And for folks who thought we were going to maybe move into a more steadfast spring weather pattern, there's still a fair amount of winter on the weather maps and charts. So going forward next week, and we'll talk about it on this weekend show as well, and have those regional maps for you and the extended outlook. So we continue to get kind of fast-moving storms in this boundary, as we call it, the weather business, between Arctic air to the north, early spring of the Gulf Coast. The winds are strong up aloft, so the weather systems tend to be of a stronger nature as well. The snow, each of these weather systems will bring progressively snowier conditions where we haven't had much, i.e. South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, into Illinois, Indiana, and points northward with time, along with some of that ice. We're not done on all that ice situation. We'll see that probably Saturday in the parts of the Midwest as well. Significant moisture is going to probably lead to some, again, elevated streams and rivers out of eastern Texas, the Mid-South, the Tennessee Valley, and Ohio Valley. 4 or 5 inches of rain coming into that part of the country. And they can't buy a winter storm in the Southwest, as the Arizona, New Mexico, and areas around there remain high and dry. There's your bullseye of moisture the next 5 days, centered on eastern Texas, the Delta region, Tennessee Valley. It's an area that had heavy rain this past week. Remember, that's the same area that had heavy snow a few weeks ago. So the grounds are relatively wet. The topsoil, at least, is relatively wet. Subsoil in some areas a little bit dry. We saw that on the drought monitor. And there are these spaghetti lines that we love to throw up there. Top left would be the outlook on Monday. Bottom center is by the time we get to Friday next week. And all we're trying to portray here is winds that come out of the Canadian Prairie, the Northwest Territories. They drop to the middle part of the country. They get that U-shaped bend. That's a weather system. And they make their way across the plains and Corn Belt. So if you count them, you got one in the west, you got one moving through the heartland by Wednesday to Thursday, another one on its heels over the western states for Friday to Saturday and towards the Valentine's holiday weekend as well. So about every 2 or 3 days, kind of a moderate intensity weather system to come on through. This might have a little better perspective to it. The H there you see across the Dakotas, that's Arctic air. You see a lot of the weather systems that come out of the Southwest. They're dry, they move into the plains, they get wet, and then they move across the colder reaches of the plains and Corn Belt locale to get snow and icy. So there is, again, about 3 systems over the next 5 to 6 days, spaced out about every 36 hours or so, that will make their way across the middle part of the country, especially that bottom middle panel. That low could bring a significant snow sometime around or just beyond the Valentine's weekend next weekend. So about 7 to 10 days out from getting something a little more significant, substantial in the way of accumulating snow and ice via the plains, via the central Corn Belt, and points onto the east. And can't rule out as well, Sarah, this time of the year getting severe weather going in these southern states. There's a quick snapshot of the next 6 to 10 days from the feds. No complaints there. Big range of temperatures from Montana to 90-degree air down through Florida. A little bit of a moderation in some of the cold north, a little bit of a northward push on some of the warmth over the beginning part to at least the mid-stretch of the month of February and the next 2 weeks. But when you put those temperatures together, the winds blow stronger, the weather systems get stronger, and you come up with this. There's some optimism of maybe getting something in the west here. Not completely on board with this yet, but over the plains and the southeastern states, all those shades of green, no shortage of weather systems to move on through. This is a little more, I think, probably a more correct look at least some of the models from the Weather Service out through the 3rd week of February in the northwestern part of the country, still active across the plains and eastern reaches of the country. So that's the quick briefing here. I know we raced through some of the stuff. We'll have better details on the TV show this weekend. We'll get together next week as well and update things. And
Yep.
Our mid February session, I believe, is coming up pretty soon as well. So
It is not next week, the week after. Then you'll give us a
Exactly.
longer term forecast. These are quick little looks at what's ahead the next few days, and then Greg joins us once a month and gives us that long term. You go out several months, I believe, when we do
Yes,
those.
we
So
will have that spring outlook on, I believe it's the 19th of February. It's ready to go already, and we'll probably have that up on the TV show if I can bend some ears over in TV land and say, give me some extra time for the spring outlook. We'll have that on there. But this is
well,
this is a great medium to share it right here with you. So
yeah, exactly. And it's important too as we get into spring on what we're going to look at from planting intentions, what those conditions are going to be like, and how soon and how how good the crop's going to be. So
yeah,
it's an important time to take a look at that, and that's why we want to jump on and keep everybody updated here as to what's ahead. Sounds like we've got a little bit of activity wherever you are in the country, and so lots of things to watch. We'll be talking to you again, I think, next Tuesday, and then
yes.
next Friday. So tune in and watch for Greg and his forecasts at that time.
And this week in agribusiness as well. And
Yep.
we talked with one of my client friends, a horticulturist, agronomist type guy, and not only we'll just there's no shortage of moisture, and then the moisture button gets turned off. That's the story going forward as we go through spring and summertime. We'll talk about it here in later broadcasts.
Very good. And Greg, when he mentions This Week in Agribusiness, that's on RFD TV every weekend, as well as another 120 affiliated stations. So be sure to tune into that as well. So Greg, thank you so much. We'll be catching up with you in a few days.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
You too.